Warning, Gory Storytime is a horror movie review show with a 13-year-old host. So, if you are not amused by the idea of a child describing R-rated graphic scenes of violence and death, or do not want movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s spoiled, this may not be the show for you. Parental guidance is suggested.
Yeah, so guide your parents out of the room so we can have some fun. Welcome to Gory Storytime. I'm your host, the young one, JT.
And I would be the old one, Craig. And today, let's tell them what movie we're going to review.
Urban Legend.
Urban Legend. So
we're reviewing that.
So you want to just throw it to the trailer and then we'll get into the discussion?
Toss.
Last week we discussed folklore. Today we get more specific. This is what we call an urban legend. Contemporary folklore passed on as a true story. Something you might have heard about mixing pop rocks and soda.
Supposedly, your stomach and your intestines burst.
Voila, still alive. Mr. Ross, please.
He's gonna explode! Somebody call 911!
They are the legends we've all heard.
Gang members drive around at night with their headlights off, and when someone goes to flash from their high beams to warn them, they kill them.
The stories we've all told.
Guy and a girl, and they're parked out in the woods. The guy steps out, and the girl starts to hear these scratching noises. It's her dead boyfriend hung from a tree.
The tales we've all listened to.
Isn't there another story about a guy with an axe hiding in a woman's back seat?
My mom still checks the back seat before getting into a car.
But just because it never happened doesn't mean it never will.
The decapitated body was found in her car.
I knew I should have gone to NYU.
This girl, she could have been any one of us.
What if there is a lunatic on campus?
What is he gonna do next, huh? Maybe put spider eggs in bubble gum?
The idea of an urban legend serial killer, it's a stretch.
The call's coming from inside the house.
Could it be an urban legend?
Something I can help you with.
I want to know what's going on here.
Someone out there is taking all these urban legends and making them reality.
Urban Legend.
Have you heard the one about the microwave?
Well, all right. So let's start by giving a synopsis, basically the story of the movie. Go ahead and... Basically, it starts with an urban legend coming to life.
Yes, and then throughout the movie, more urban legends come to life and come to find out.
There's a serial killer.
Using urban legends to kill people.
And there's a reason for it, which we'll get into later, because this show is all about spoiling things.
Spoilers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, throughout, this group of college students is finding out that these random deaths aren't so random, and they are just being, murdered
torturously
by urban legends.
Yes. Torturously.
So, I guess one of my things was I like the idea of it. This is in the 90s. They had quite a few horror movies that could really happen. they could take place. Scream was realistic. There was no dead person coming back to life, stuff like that. It was things that really could happen. That one was actually inspired by true events in a way.
Spoilers, this one, someone should have died twice.
Well,
didn't.
You don't always die just because you get hurt.
Shot in the head and thrown out a window.
Well, I suppose. But the point is, they had I Know What You Did Last Summer. It was realistic. It was a human being. It wasn't some,
like
mythical creature
Freddy
coming
Krueger.
back from hell, or, you know what I mean? So I like the fact that they had quite a few movies that were doing that, and they usually had a lot of humor in them. This one was definitely no exception. And I don't know, just the whole idea that this one girl, it seems to be she knows a lot of people that are turning up dead, and we find out that there's a reason for that too. The first death was pretty gruesome with the gas station attendant.
Yeah, trying to lock her in and then making us think he was going to do something, and then her head goes flying out the window or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they touched on a lot of them. Even, they had a class in the movie where, Robert Englund, who played Professor Wexler, also better known as Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
First episode.
Yeah, our first episode was about that, but he is teaching a class on urban legends, and everybody's heard those. It's like, well, I heard that this happened. No, I know it's true because my friend from school's
Mikey likes
cousin. Yeah, that was one that they did. But my friend from school, told me that the town she grew up in, that happened, and she knows for a fact it happened. There's a lot of those.
Well, I have a friend that thinks his father knows someone that's uncle had this happen.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I actually worked with a man who swore that he knew that, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre claims to be based on a true story, which it was, but it didn't happen in Texas. They filmed it in Texas, didn't have the money to change the signs, so they made it Texas. But this man's from Texas and swears, no, I know people that were cops that were involved in solving that crime in Texas, and I had to call BS on him because it didn't happen in Texas.
What was the town's name?
I don't even remember. It was the story of Ed Gein, who a few movies have been inspired by. But I'm sure we'll get into some of his movies. Texas Chainsaw, Psycho.
Psycho?
Yeah, it was inspired by him. And Hannibal Lecter was inspired by him.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, well, that's Hannibal Lecter. So, even horror movies have their own urban legends about them, you know what I mean? So the fact that they took urban legends that people have told for
decades.
Years, sometimes, 100 years, depending on what it is, and rolled them all into a movie plot. I thought that was an interesting take on horror, but there's also a lot of jokes thrown in for people that know
about
who these actors are and stuff. So it almost became its own kind of horror movie in the 90s, where it's like realistic horror starring kids who the characters understand horror movies. They're not caught by surprise completely because they grew up watching horror movies themselves. That's the whole plot of Scream.
Yeah.
Well,
it was the movies he was watching. It was the games. No.
Pretty much.
He was a psycho.
There's that. So I know we usually wait a little later, but why don't we get to today's commercials before we do all our behind-the-scenes facts. So today's show is brought to you by UL Cleaning Service. If you are the victim of an urban legend, we will get the stains out, from dogs cooked in your microwave to bloodstains caused by the removal of your kidney. There is no urban legend too tough. Call 555-FAKE. That's 555-FAKE. And also by
Pendleton College, where no murders have occurred on campus since 1998. We soon will be re-accredited. Come to Pendleton College in Melbourne, New Hampshire.
All right.
If you
Oh, yes.
If you
a real commercial.
have any suggestions for movies, questions, or comments, email the show at gorystorytime@yahoo.com.
That's our actual
email.
email.
This time.
True. We would love anyone who's watching this, if you have any suggestions for movies, like he said, or questions or comments about the show, even if you don't like the fact that I have my 13-year-old son co-hosting a show where we're reviewing horror movies. I mean, I'm his co-host. Yeah. There's people with plenty of opinions on that, and we would love to hear feedback, good, bad, or just any comments. And again, if there's any movies you would love to see him review, please email us. And I'll say that again, it's all one word, Gory Storytime, all lowercase, @yahoo.com. And
no Blair Witch.
We may read your email on the air in a future episode.
Yes.
All right, so let's get to some of the behind the scenes information that we like to do in our reviews. Would you like to start? Or?
Yeah,
all right.
I'll go first. When Paul and Natalie sneak into the hidden room in Wexler's office, a puppet of Freddy Krueger is shown just before they find his axe. The actor who played Wexler is Robert Englund, who, of course, is Freddy Krueger in the Elm Street franchise.
Absolutely. And a lot of these pieces of information are like that because these actors had a pretty big body of work. For example, Damon Brooks, who is this character, is played by Joshua Jackson. In one scene, Damon was starting his car so he could bring Natalie out to the woods to talk. That was her idea, but his was a little different. The Paula Cole song, I Don't Want to Wait, is cranking on his stereo. That is the theme song to Dawson's Creek, who one of the stars of that show was Joshua Jackson. And of course his comment was,
I can't stand that song, and
exactly.
Turned it down.
Another little in-joke for people that know who these actors are.
The stuttering gas station attendant in the beginning of the movie is played by Brad Dourif, who played Billy
Babbitt.
Bibbit,
sorry. Yeah, Billy Bibbit.
In one of the few
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
And best known as Charles Lee Ray, a.k.a. Chucky in
Child's Play.
Blah, 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 blah. Child's Play.
That's all right.
Repeat,
yeah, Brad Dourif, he's been an actor for many years, but interesting addition to that, he played a stuttering gas attendant, like you said, in this movie. When he played Billy, Bibbit, his character had a speech impediment in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So this isn't the first time he spoke.
Played a stutter.
I don't know if it was a stutter. I know it was a speech impediment, though.
Oh, okay.
I think it might have been. It's been a long time since I saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Good movie.
Never heard of it.
Not really horror. It's more like psychological, twisted, weird. Good movie. No, not quite. It's about a nut house, as one would say. But did you know that Sarah Michelle Gellar, who was in I Know What You Did Last Summer, for example, was supposed to play the character of Sasha, who was...
Sasha.
No, Sasha's not up there. Sasha was the blonde played by Tara Reid. But originally, Sarah Michelle Gellar had that part, but she had to back out. Exactly. She had to back out because of a scheduling conflict when filming Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show. But she has done horror movies too. She was in The Grudge. She was in I Know What You Did Last Summer. So she's done a few, but she had to back out of this one because of schedule issues. If you want
to... The movie's fictional location, Melbourne, New Hampshire, named after the director's home city in Australia.
Yeah, he was from Melbourne, Australia, so they called it Melbourne, New Hampshire. And that's why one of the characters, actually Damon Brooks, was supposed to be leaving to go to Vermont. He was going to Killington to go skiing and snowboarding. And New Hampshire being so close to Vermont, Killington being a real place, Melbourne, New Hampshire, not. Let's see. There's a few times you'll see this name in the movie if you look close. There's a book called The Encyclopedia of Urban Legends. It says it's written by Charles Breen. The bottle of lithium that the character Tosh had said Dr. Charles Breen had been the person who prescribed it to her. Charles Breen was the production designer for the movie, so he slipped his name in there a couple times.
Okay. Melissa Joan Hart.
Oh, she was Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yes.
And Nickelodeon had a show back when I was a kid called Clarissa Explains It All that she starred in.
Turned down the role of Natalie.
Yeah, which would be the main good girl.
Oh, yeah.
Here's one that's interesting. At the end, when people were discussing the events of the movie, and referring to it as if it was its own urban legend, one of the characters said, "Oh, right, and I bet Brenda was the girl who was in the Noxzema commercials." And
she was.
Yes, the actress Rebecca Gayheart, who played Brenda, was in quite a few Noxzema commercials. As a matter of fact, when I watched this movie with your mother, she kept saying, "That's the Noxzema girl." Like that's what she knew her from.
The Latin motto for the college translates to "the best friend did it," and the killer's last name is Bates, the name of the killer in Psycho.
So they kind of were giving it away. Not that too many people read Latin, but those who do read Latin would have found out that the best friend did it right from the beginning shot when you see the crest for the college. That's kind of a interesting
Is this
fact.
all one?
Yeah, that's...
Like, is that all translated?
Yeah. Well, no. Those are two different things. But that's all right. We also found some mistakes, which, like I said before, we're calling these grave mistakes whenever it happens in a movie, like, a horror movie. There's a scene where the campus police lady slips in Wexler's office in a pool of blood. Like, all her backside basically was soaked with blood. Later on, she rushes to help in the end, and her pants and shirt and everything are completely clean, no blood on them. And it's very unlikely that she would have stopped and changed her clothes when she knew that there was a killer and she was running to the scene. The chances of her going, "Wait, I better change my pants," that doesn't make a lot of sense, you know?
Like, oh, you know that guy that's murdering people? First I gotta do my hair.
Yeah, it's like, we'll get right on that. Let's go have lunch. You know, that kind of thing. Just, no.
When Natalie gets cut at the end, she screams, but then has no reaction or pain for the rest of the movie.
Well, and the thing about that is,
it was supposed to be deep enough
they were supposed to remove her
kidney.
Yeah.
Also a urban legend.
Yeah,
someone wakes up in a tub of ice and
absolutely
has one kidney.
And it's funny that she screams then, but later on, a cut that deep seems to have no effect on her whatsoever.
Do you have?
Oh, yeah, I got a couple. The vehicle that was used in the opening scene of the movie, it was supposed to be a Land Rover, but what they ended up using was a Ford Expedition. And the reason for that was they had to have the killer swing an axe from the back seat to cut off her head. Not a spoiler, first scene of the movie. But the reason they couldn't use the Land Rover, it was too small. The only vehicle that they could find that was big enough to really fully swing the axe was the Expedition.
Natasha Gregson Wagner played Michelle, the girl who dies in the first scene. Mm-hmm. Her parents are actor Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood.
Yes, and
so
there was a whole horrific story about Natalie Wood, but I'll get into that with you at another time because there's a true story about death that involves Natalie Wood.
I think it's funny because Natalie and Wagner. Yeah. Her name was Natalie Gregson Wagner.
And Natalie Wood was
her mom's name.
No, Natasha is her name.
Oh, in real life?
Yeah, that's not a character. Natasha Grayson Wagner played Michelle, Michelle isn't up there either. She was in the first scene. She was the first person killed.
Oh, I thought that was her name in the movie, and
No,
they
no,
took
no.
the. Oh,
No.
okay.
No, but her real life parents, and they kind of got the idea from other movies. There was other horror movies where someone would die right off at the beginning, and they were either a celebrity or their parents were famous. Scream had Drew Barrymore be the first person killed in the first scene of Scream, as an example.
Hung by her own intestines. Ugh.
Yeah, well, her parents were actors too. Drew Barrymore, she's an actress of her own right. I mean, from E.T. and whatever, but we'll probably be watching Scream. I'm talking about.
You just said E.T.
Yeah.
She was in E.T.
Drew Barrymore was the girl. She was Gertie.
Oh.
You didn't realize that?
No.
She was also in Cat's Eye, the Stephen King movie, and Firestarter, the Stephen King movie. That was Drew Barrymore.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Anyway.
I just learned.
I didn't know you didn't know that. I thought we've talked about that. But so yeah, that's pretty much it for the facts that we have. But well, and of course, one of the things we like to talk about is how many deaths there were. Do you remember how many deaths were in this movie?
8 and 1 dog.
Yes, 8 humans and 1 dog. And
the last movie, 1 cat.
Spoiler, the killer didn't die, which you find out in the little extra scene at the end where she's at another college talking about
the same college.
No, it was a different college. You didn't get that?
No, it looked like the same.
Oh, and that's one thing I forgot to mention.
That they were sitting
the college
in the beginning.
One thing I forgot to mention, the college that they filmed this at was the same college they filmed a movie called The Skulls, which also starred Joshua Jackson, who was in this one. They use it a lot for colleges. A lot of times movie companies will do
creepy things.
They go to Canada a lot because it's cheaper to film there, is what I was going to say. So that's why that college.
In Nightmare on Elm Street, the outside was
a real house in Canada. Yes, absolutely. A lot of that has to do with the fact that California taxes are really high, and they charge so much that film crews are like, well, we're out of here. We're going to Louisiana or we're going to Toronto, and we'll be back when we're done filming, which only hurts their economy by not having them, them stay in town to film. But, since we live in Vermont, I guess it doesn't really affect us, the tax bracket of people in California. Is there any other comments you really want to talk about for Urban Legends?
No.
No? I mean, there's nothing else that you, like any other scenes you want to talk about before we get to our favorite and least favorite, obviously?
Right. There's not really anything else.
Pretty much covered what you wanted to? All right. Well, then I guess I'll ask you, what was your favorite scene of the movie?
I'd have to say my favorite scene was at the party when the guy got the phone call from
the killer.
The killer, and it popped up with the number from upstairs, and he's like, oh, let me guess, this is the one where the babysitter is
getting a phone call from inside the house.
And then he's like, no, haven't you heard the one about the dog getting cooked?
Yeah, and the old lady drying her dog in the microwave.
Yeah. And then he runs down and finds the dog.
And there was a cut scene that showed a little extra about how much he loved the dog. The problem was they cut some of that. There was a scene where he was being intimate with his girlfriend, played by Tara Reid, and the dog was barking and she had to kick him out of the room, and the guy was upset that the dog had to leave for them to have some alone time. And she's like, I'm not having the dog watched. I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. But that wasn't really in the movie fully.
Right.
So they had implied that he really loved his dog, which made it more horrific that he opens the microwave to find an exploded dog, because
never cook a hot dog in there.
Never cook a hot dog? Yeah. Well,
yes.
This wasn't a hot dog, so.
It was a dog, but whatever.
I guess in a slightly different direction, my favorite scene is more, again, I don't always do just one scene. My thing is, I love that they put all the references that they did, that we've talked about.
Dawson's Creek.
Freddy Krueger.
Noxzema.
Yeah, I like that they kind of played on that, where it's a joke that no one's going to get, unless they
they've-
really know these
Yeah.
actors from other things. But anyone that does, it's like an extra level of humor thrown in on top of the scary stuff.
Right.
What would you say your least favorite scene was, though?
My least favorite scene would have to be when at the end, when the killer gets shot and kicked out of the window, stays alive, gets thrown off a bridge into the lake, and then is talking to new people at a
Different college.
about it happening.
Yeah. So you didn't like that she survived?
No.
Well, there are times where people survive amazing things. I mean, recently in the news, there was the kid who snuck on an airplane in the wheel well and flew from Los Angeles all the way to Hawaii, and it gets really cold that high up and stuff, and they were saying it was up to 80 degrees below zero, and he survived that trip. It's like his body kind of shut down, almost like in a cryogenic state, and when he got there, he woke up and he's pretty much healthy and okay. But I guess he was running away to go to his mom who lived in another country, and Hawaii wasn't the right direction. But the fact that he could get into that was pretty messed up. But
Yeah.
not that this is a show about the news, but the point is, it does kind of show that you never know what people can survive.
Right.
So it's possible,
But I didn't like that she was supposedly dead in the lake. After.
Well, they never showed her being dead. They just showed her possibly dying.
Yeah, getting shot in the chest, and then.
People can survive that at times. So, like I said, but I can see what you're saying. Your problem is you would have hoped that she just outright died.
Yes, I wanted the killer to be dead.
Okay. I would say my least favorite scene was probably, and it's not a horror scene, it was when the dean was coming down on Natalie and Paul, the reporter, the guy who ran the college,
Yes.
is the dean, because he wanted to cover up what had happened at that
Massacre.
Yeah, the massacre
25
years
years ago,
earlier. Plus, he now didn't want the reporter reporting that there was a serial killer on campus, basically trying to cover it up. So he got him fired from the paper, and was threatening to have her kicked out of school because of legal problems she had when she was in high school, which definitely come into play. I mean, the twist of who did it was because of why she had legal trouble when she was younger.
Which I don't understand, because they were best friends in the movie. Wouldn't you have a problem with someone that murdered your girlfriend?
Boyfriend.
Well, no, I'm saying,
me.
yeah. If you,
well, yeah, but
yes, if someone murdered your boyfriend.
Well, I thought you were referring to the movie, not me. Yes, if someone murdered my girlfriend, I would be upset with them, absolutely.
And you wouldn't be trying to get close to them.
But this person was doing it so that she could get away with it. Because if she played the best friend, who's going to suspect that she's the killer? Who's going to suspect that she's the one doing it? That's why she did it. Because the more she was, because then anyone interviewed would be like, oh, it couldn't have been her. They were tight. They, obviously she would have never done it. So she was setting it up so that she wouldn't take the fall. As a matter of fact, she set it up so that Robert Englund's character of Professor Wexler was going to take the fall because he taught the Urban Legends class, so she made it look like he was the one going to actually
take
be
the
the
fall
killer.
because
Right.
they walked in the room with the axe or whatever, and the axe was missing during
But
a
that was
scene.
my least favorite part, not because it was a bad scene, but basically because it's been overdone. The idea of, this college student or the stars of a movie in a college, are getting hassled by the dean who's coming down on them for whatever reason. And you're supposed to hate them. And it's like, okay, they keep doing that plot line in comedies.
Why don't you make the dean the
horror,
nice guy?
Yeah, I mean, just once. Like, why does, the guy have to be,
a bad guy?
A bad guy, exactly.
Make him be the first death. Make him the nice guy for the first 5 minutes and have him die.
Well, I guess it's getting close to time to wrap it up, I think. But my question for you is,
what would you rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd have to say, because it touched on so many urban legends and it was like that, like, I don't know how to explain, like deep into the urban legend part, I'd have to say an 8.
An 8? I'm going to go with probably a 7. The reason I give it a little lower is it's not the first movie to be realistic. It's not the first horror movie in that kind of genre of horror. And it was getting to the point where it's like, okay, I've kind of seen this type of thing. The urban legend part was a cool twist. It was different. But even like there's a movie about someone getting phone calls from inside their house, you know, that had been done before this, that they remade after this. You know, so I mean, even that isn't original as far as taking an urban legend and putting it into a horror movie.
Okay.
So even that had happened. So I guess if they had done it a little more new, the way they did it, maybe I would have given it a higher one. But I mean, it's a decent movie. I enjoyed it. We obviously had a good time watching it, but I'm gonna definitely give it a 7.
Okay.
So
that's our episode of Gory Story Time, and
why don't you look in the camera so we can say goodbye then? So
that was our episode of Gory Story Time and
about urban legends
and Sweet Dreams.
Sweet dreams.